Hello and welcome back to another edition of our Down and Dirty Mini Movies. This is video number 12 in a short film help series where I bring you short videos showing techniques of our different product portfolio. And today we're going to be back in magnet field and we're going to be taking some topo shots and covering some line work. But I really want to talk and introduce you to custom codes today. Now, this is not really a true training lesson. For training, always visit the e-learning portal, elearning.topcon.com, and then there's always tons of resources on the products you can find on the My TopCon Now app from your phone through that app, or you can get it through a browser that you can get through the apps from TopCon Positioning's homepage. So let's get started. Now here in Magnet Field, I have a job created, job number 12. This is Magnet Field version 6.1.2. This particular job, I am connected to a GPS receiver. Under Edit Points, I have one point here that I created, point number 1 at 5,500, and then I measured in a point and localized on it. So this is a one-point localization. And if you're unfamiliar with one-point localization, you can see me do the example in the video number 8 where I collect the volumes. Now, in the map view, we noticed here, I'm just going to be using this particular map. This is an OpenStreetMap view. So I'm connected to the internet and I've got a geo reference position. It knows where I'm at on the map. And if you need to change your map, you go to Map Settings, and under the Background tab that you see here, you can browse to the predefined Bing maps or the OpenStreetMaps that I have selected here. So we're going to be collecting some topo as-built shots under Survey and Topo, and we're going to be collecting some line work. And specifically, we're going to be showing you quite a few of the options of the control codes, how to basically maximize your line work. So let's begin by first, maybe just a simple edge of pavement down through here, okay? So I'm going to move down to the edge of pavement, and I'm just going to begin right here. Now the first thing I want to do is choose my description, and like I say, this is just a simple edge of pavement. And this next box, since this code is a string or line feature, gives you an option for this box to create strings, so we can string the shots together by a line. Now what I put in this box for the string is not important in the sense that it could be a 1, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the number of lines. It could actually be A, B, C. It could really be almost anything that identifies that this edge of pavement is being strung together by this particular string number. So I'm occupying the edge of pavement on a string 1, and I can actually measure that. Now let's move across the street here. Now this is another side of the street, and I want to connect the lines for it, and I'm going to give it a string value of 2. Okay? So let's measure this point. Now let's move up to this angle point. So I've occupied the point. I'm on number 2 side of the street. This is number 2. Let's measure that, and it draws the line. Now let's move across the street. I've occupied this point. I want to go back to this string value, and this is a string 1. Let's measure it, and now it will draw the line from here. Now this has got direction of travel. It's kind of a bold line because this is the active line. This line was drawn, you can see it here. So let's move out to our next point down here. I've occupied my point. I'm on that side of the street for the string 1, and let's measure that. Now I am not going to collect this point now, and again I always like to collect multiple points and make mistakes and show you how to fix those. So I'm going to show you something about this a little bit later when we go into the control codes. Okay? So let's go on down to the next angle point. We're occupying it, string 1, and let's store this particular point. Alright. And let's move across the street. Let's change our string value to number 2, and let's measure this particular line. Now, as you notice here, it created lines as we traverse down this road, but I mainly forgot about this point. Something happened. This is where we can actually experiment a little bit with control codes. Now, your control codes are located under this particular icon here. So we'll open that up, and right now we're just adding to each end of the line. We got options to add to the beginning of the line, the start of the line, insert, and different options here that we'll cover as we go. In this particular example, let's use the insert function. So I'm on line number 2. I've chose insert. I'm going to move back to this particular point here. Okay? I've made a mistake. I forgot to shoot this point or overlooked it, but I need to draw the line work to here. I've chose the control code to insert, and now when I measure this particular point here, and that's string number 2 for that side of the road, it will actually pull that line back in and insert it. That's the insert control code. Okay? Now let's take, for example, we wanted to pick up and go this direction. So let's move down to this point right here. There may be a reason that you could not go this direction the very first time, but now we want to come back and extend the road here. I need to go back and add to the start of the line. I do need to make sure that I'm on the string on this side of the road, and now let's measure the point here. Okay? If I would have left that where it was, at the insert, it would have drawn the line from here all the way to here instead of picking up the end, if that makes sense. Because we added to the start. This is where we started and began the line. The same thing, we've got add to start. We can go across the road. Let's do that now. And move over here. Let's change our string back to 1 because that's line number 1. And let's measure that. And it now drew the line down to here. So let's zoom out just a little bit and let's continue on with our edge of pavement. I'm going to choose edge of pavement. I'm going to create a new string value, number 3, and I'm just going to begin right in this area here. Now if we look at our control codes, we've covered add to the end, add to the start, and insert. Let's go ahead and create an arc start and an arc end and draw a little bit of a curve functionality in here. So a brand new line, EP number 3, and we're going to be traversing this way. So let's first measure this particular point, and now let's move up to our beginning of the curve. So I moved up to this particular point, and it's going to be a curve that I'm going to draw in here. So I'm going to say this is an arc start, and let's measure this point. Now this particular line is going to be a straight tangent for right now. Continue on. Measure another point. Let's move. Now here is the pointed tangent coming out of this curve, and we'll say this is where the arc ends here. Now notice this is more of a straight line, this is a straight line, but once you finally put in the arc in and measure your last point, it actually smooths out your curve going through. And then we can move up and measure your point. And that's how you do an arc end and an arc start. Next, let's cover a circle edge. We want to draw circles by using the edge. So instead of measuring points all along this, if it's pretty centrally defined as a circle, I'm going to measure right here and definitely want to give it its own unique string value. So we'll jump this up to number 4. And I've chosen, or going to choose, circle edge. Okay, so now this icon for the control code is changed. Let's measure this. I'm going to basically shoot 2 more points on this particular curve. So I'll move up to our next location, edge of pavement, 4. I only have to hit that control code 1 time. And let's move down to our 3rd point that we're going to measure for this control code, and let's measure that. And notice that it automatically draws the circle in, and that was done through circle edges. Okay? Next, let's take a look at circle radius. Now we would use this particular option preferably if you do have a radius point that we could physically occupy. It'd be a lot more accurate than the example I'm going to show you. But anytime you want to maybe draw the curved line so you can stake that out, and you've got a radius point you can start from, we can draw that in. And let's do that in this example. So we'll choose circle radius, and I'm going to move to the center of this particular circle. Now I've occupied this point. Now it's very important that I change my string to a whole new string value, otherwise it would corrupt this particular string of 4. So this edge of pavement 5, it's going to be the outside part of this circle because we chose circle radius. So let's measure our next point. And then next, let's move out. We'll occupy where we want to be on the outside with this particular line. And now let's measure this other point and see how it draws the line in. And like I say, it's not going to be exactly overlapping this map, but you see how it's performed. And that was using circle radius. Next, let's draw a rectangle. So we've got rectangle selected, and let's move out to this particular pad right here. So I've occupied this particular pad, and this keeps us from having to shoot all 4 points to draw the line. So I want to change my description and my string on this particular one. So I'm going to choose, I think we have a pad line in here. And this can be string number 1 because it's the only pad we've got going on that we're stringing together. So I want to make sure we go back to here, make sure we're on rectangle. That changed when I changed the description, unfortunately. So double check everything before you start, and we're going to measure our first point. We'll move up to our second point. This is a pad line. Measure it. Move over to our third point, and notice once we measure it, it automatically closed the rectangle. And that was using rectangle feature of the control codes. Now we also have a close feature, and let me show you how this works. Let's move down to this building right here. Now let's take for example I did not choose the rectangular feature when I was creating this. So let's go back to a building line, and I'll just use string number 2. I've already got a building line 1. Alright, and like I say, let's say I forgot to do a rectangle, or maybe this is not a rectangle, and since it's not, well, this might be a good example. So let's go ahead and topo around this real quick. Move to our next point, we'll measure that, and it starts drawing the line. Now I've went completely around this building, and I'm ready to measure my very last point. And I don't want to remeasure this point just to draw this line back down to here. We have a nice feature in control codes called close. You have to choose it prior to shooting your very last point. So we'll choose close. Let's occupy our last point. We're going to close on this particular point back to the beginning. Let's measure that. So it measured this line and drew it in, and then close back to the beginning. So back under control codes, let's see what we have left. We have an arc end and start, and an arc end and close. What this is basically a point of reverse curve. And well, let's just make something up, and we can show you how that works. Okay. I'm just going to zoom out here just in the middle of really nowhere, possibly, and just draw some lines right here. So I'm going to draw a line, and we'll just call this a center line. When I have no strings, I've not done any center lines, so I can choose string number 1, and I want to measure a point, and then let's move down here just in a and we'll measure a point. Now this is going to be a tangent line, but this is going to be the point of the first curve, point of the beginning of the curve. So I'm going to do an arc start and measure that. And let's measure 2 points on the curve. And this next point we're going to measure is going to be the arc coming back the opposite way. Okay? So I measured a point on the curve, point on the curve, point on the curve, but it's going to be the point of reverse curve. So this is an arc end and arc start. And let's measure that. Now it's smoothed out that particular line. We're going to occupy a point on the curve coming back out this other way. And let's measure 2 points on the curve. And this last point I shoot is going to be the arc end of this reverse curve. And now just smooth that out. So I arc start, arc end and start, and arc end again. And last but not least, there's an arc end and close. So let's shoot a couple of lines and then an arc, and let's close back to the beginning. So I'm going to create us a new string of number 2 for a center line. Let's measure that. Let's move down. Let's do an arc start. Let's move. Let's move down. Now this is going to be the arc end and close. Arc start, point on the arc in, and hopefully it's going to close back to the beginning. Just like that. And that concludes this tutorial on using control codes.